The sky was never blue on the planet of Velora. It was always gray, always crying. Storms ruled the land like angry kings. Winds screamed across broken cities, and oceans swallowed towns one by one. No one remembered the last sunrise. Children were born under dark clouds. And the old ones died listening to thunder. In one of the few surviving high towers, a young alien scientist named Era stood. She watched the rain hit the glass like it was trying to break through. Her people had once lived in peace and beauty. Now they only waited to drown, to fall, to disappear. Era's voice trembled as she sent the last message. It was not meant for her people. It was meant for the stars. "Please," she whispered. "If anyone out there can hear us, we need help. We are dying." No one believed the message would work. They said the storms would eat the sky before anyone answered. But Era still hoped. Hope was the only thing left they hadn't lost. 3 nights later, something changed. The sky split open, not with lightning, but light. A ship appeared through the clouds, large, quiet, and smooth. It didn't belong to Velora. It was something else, something strange. People ran outside and pointed to the sky. From the ship came a smaller craft. It landed on a broken landing pad just outside the city ruins. The doors opened, and a tall figure stepped out. He wore a strange suit and a helmet that hid his face. But his steps were slow, careful, peaceful. "I am Liam," the figure said. Removing his helmet, he looked human. He smiled, even though the wind pulled at his hair and rain touched his face. "I heard your message," he said. "I came to help." Era stared at him like he was a ghost, a real human from another world. Her people had heard of humans long ago. They were builders, dreamers, explorers, but also destroyers. Some feared him, others stayed silent. "You can't stop the storms," said an old general. "No one can," said a tired farmer. But Liam only nodded, like he had heard those words before. "I know storms," he replied softly. "I lost my own world to them." Era invited him into the science dome. It was one of the few buildings still working. Inside, Liam studied the maps of wind, rain, ocean currents, pressure levels. His eyes moved fast. His fingers tapped on glowing screens. "What are you looking for?" Era asked. "Patterns," he said. "Everything looks like chaos, but there's always a pattern." He spent days walking in the rain, touching the soil, testing the air. He even stood on a rooftop during a storm, just watching the clouds. People thought he was mad. But then, something strange happened. Liam built a small device, placed it in the middle of a storm path. When the winds came, the device spun, blinked, and released a low hum. The storm slowed, just for a moment, but it was enough. People gasped. "It worked," Era whispered. Liam smiled. But he looked serious too. "That was just a tiny test," he said. "To stop the real storms, I'll need your help." But not everyone wanted to help. Some leaders feared him. "What if he's here to take over?" they asked. "What if this is just human trickery?" Liam didn't argue. He simply returned to the storm lab and kept working. Era followed him, watching him draw plans, run simulations, and build strange machines from broken metal. One night, as the winds howled outside, Liam told her a story. "My world once looked like this," he said. "We kept building, burning, and taking from nature. Then the balance broke. The weather turned against us, cities sank, and no one came to help. But now I can help someone else." Era's heart felt heavy. This human had lost everything, but still came to save strangers. "Why do you care about us?" she asked. Liam looked at her and replied, "Because your people asked for help, and no one answered when mine did." The next day, news came. A superstorm was forming in the north, bigger than anything they had seen before. It would reach the last safe zone in 3 days. People began to panic. Liam stood before the council, holding a small model of his machine. "This can stop it," he said, "but only if we start building now." Some believed him, some still doubted. Era stepped forward and said, "If we do nothing, we will all die. If we trust him, we might live." Silence fell. Finally, the council Nodded, Liam walked out into the rain, this time not alone. Behind him, Ara and a group of builders followed. Hope walked with them, for the first time in years. Far in the sky, the storm gathered strength. It looked unstoppable, but now something new had entered the fight, not a weapon. A human, with a plan, *. The rain didn't stop, but something else had changed. For the first time in years, hope was stronger than fear. And at the center of that hope stood a stranger, a human, named Liam. Most Vellorans had never seen a human before. They had read stories, some beautiful, some terrifying. Now one walked among them, with eyes that held storms of their own. Liam didn't sleep much. He spent nights walking through ruins, studying broken towers, poking into old vents, and scanning the ground with a strange glowing device. Ara followed him quietly, watching, learning, and wondering what went on inside his mind. He asked questions that no one had asked before. What did the wind sound like before the sea rose? Where does the heat go after the storm passes? Why does this soil feel too cold, even when the sun tries to come out? Ara often had no answers. No one did, because they had given up asking. Inside the science dome, Liam used old machines and scraps to build new tools. He drew strange shapes in the air with his hands as he talked to himself. This isn't just weather, he mumbled one night. It's a system fighting to survive. One day, he placed a strange metal rod in the ground near the edge of a flooded zone. It looked simple, but when the wind passed by it, the air around the rod shimmered. The storm shifted, just slightly, but enough to be noticed. It works like a whisper, Liam explained. The storm listens if you speak in the right way. The Velloran scientists were confused, even scared. Are you trying to talk to the weather? One of them asked. Liam smiled. Not talk, just ... Negotiate. Ara watched him carefully. She had never met anyone like him. He didn't act like a hero or a soldier. He acted like a mechanic trying to fix a giant broken machine. Soon word spread. Some people began calling him the Storm Whisperer. Others weren't so kind. He's playing games with death, they said. Humans ruined their own world. Why should we trust them with ours? The council grew restless. Liam's experiments worked in small zones, but they needed to work everywhere, and time was short. The superstorm was getting closer. Its winds already brushing the northern forests. One council leader, Marin, demanded results. If you can change the weather, show us now, he said. Liam didn't argue. Instead, he pointed to the mountain range in the distance. Let me go there, he said. There's a natural funnel in those cliffs. I can use it, Ara. Step forward. It's dangerous. Liam looked at her calmly. Storms are dangerous. Doing nothing is worse. They left at dawn. Flying in a rusted old skimmer ship, the wind pushed hard. But Liam kept smiling. He seemed excited, like a child going to fix a broken toy. When they reached the cliffs, he climbed out into the wind. Rain hit his face like stones, but he didn't flinch. He placed small devices along the cliff edge, tiny emitters made of wire, glass, and hope. What do these do? Ara shouted over the wind. They sing, he answered. They tell the storm where not to go. As the storm rolled in, the machines activated. A low hum filled the air, soft, like the deep song of the sea. The storm shifted again, not much, but enough to save a village down below. Enough to make people believe. Back at the base, the council couldn't deny what they saw. Still, Marin was not convinced. You moved wind, he said, but can you stop a monster? Liam didn't promise. He never did. I don't stop monsters, he said. I redirect them. I give them something else to chase. That night, Ara found him sitting under a broken roof, looking at the stars that barely peeked through the clouds. He looked tired, not in his body, but in his soul. Why do you do this? She asked. Because I failed once, he replied. I built too late. I warned too little. I ran out of time. She didn't ask about that world, about Earth. He never spoke its name, but in his silence, she heard the truth. He wasn't just helping them. He was trying to forgive himself. In the shadows, someone else listened too. A technician named Vorn, who believed Liam was dangerous. He didn't trust humans, and he had a plan of his own. The story of the humans spread fast. Some called him a savior, others a liar. But one thing was certain: Valora would never be the same again. And as the superstorm grew closer, Liam knew. The hardest part hadn't even begun, because nature had rules, but fear? Fear had no rules, and fear was already moving against him. The wind had teeth that morning, sharp, wet, and cold. It scraped across the broken towers of Valora like claws. Down below, in the flooded streets, people moved like shadows, waiting for news, waiting for a miracle. But hope always demands a price, and today, Liam had to pay it. Inside the science dome, the new storm maps were glowing red. Era stared at them, her throat dry. The superstorm was shifting its path, now heading toward the central ridge. That was where most of their clean energy towers still stood. If those were destroyed, Valora's last source of power would vanish. Liam stood over the map, arms crossed, thinking. He wasn't afraid of the storm, he was afraid of failing again. "We can redirect it," he said, tapping the screen. "But I need stronger materials to build the amplifiers, something that can handle heat, pressure, and constant vibration." Era blinked. "We don't have anything like that here." "We do," Liam replied. "But it's in the drowned city." Silence followed his words. Everyone in the room stopped. The drowned city, known as Nairi, was once Valora's brightest city. Now it was a sunken ghost, half underwater, half broken, all dangerous. No one had gone there in years, not just because of the collapsing buildings or sharp ruins, but because something lived in its deep places. "It's madness," Marin said sharply. "You'll never make it back." Liam looked at him calmly. "Then we'll never make it at all." Era stepped forward. "I'll go with him." Marin stared at her, shocked. "Why would you risk your life for a human?" "I'm not," she answered. "I'm risking it for Valora." The journey began before sunrise. Liam and Era took a small storm pod, a metal capsule designed for short flights through rough skies. It rattled and shook like it might fall apart. At any moment, Liam laughed while strapping in. "It's charming in a suicidal kind of way." Era smirked. "If we die, at least we'll die sarcastic." The storm pod flew low across flooded fields, broken roads, and giant waves, at times. Lightning flashed so close it burned the air. They said nothing during the flight. Some silences are full of fear, others full of purpose. This one was both. When the drowned city came into view, even Liam grew quiet. Towers leaned like dying trees, half submerged and covered in seaweed. Lights flickered in windows that hadn't seen life in years. They landed on what was once a rooftop garden, now cracked and overgrown with mold. Below them was the materials lab, the only place that had the alloy Liam needed. Inside the building, darkness wrapped around them like fog. Every step echoed like a whisper. Walls were broken, doors twisted, and glass crunched underfoot. "There." Liam pointed to a sealed vault beneath a collapsed floor. They climbed down, pushing through water and rubble. It took hours to break into the vault using tools, force, and some very creative swearing from Liam. Finally, they opened it. Inside were long bars of a strange dark metal, dense, durable, perfect. Liam grinned like a child finding treasure. "This is it," he said. "This is what we need to save your planet." But just as they loaded the metal into a floating crate, the ground shook. A low growl echoed through the floor. Water rippled in the corners of the room. Something was moving beneath them. Era froze. "Tell me that was just the wind." Liam's face darkened. "I don't think your wind growls." A shadow moved in the water, long, thick, with glowing eyes. It circled them like a hunter, silent and patient. Liam reached for a light emitter, tossing it into the water. The flash lit up the shape, massive, armored, ancient. "It's not just a creature," Era whispered. "It's a guardian." They ran, dragging the crate behind them. The building shook again as the guardian slammed into its foundation. Water burst through the hallway like a living wall. They reached the stairs, climbing fast, lungs burning. The storm pod waited on the roof, but the platform was cracking. "Go," Era shouted. "Get in and start the engine." "What about you?" Liam yelled. "I'll distract it," she replied, and ran toward the edge of the roof. Shouting into the storm, the Guardian followed her roar, bursting through the water. But before it could strike, Liam activated the storm pod's lights and aimed them directly at the creature's eyes. Blinded and confused, the Guardian paused. Era slipped past it, grabbing Liam's hand. Together they jumped into the pod, sealed it, and launched. Just as the rooftop collapsed behind them, as they flew away, the creature disappeared into the waves again, not defeated but respectful. It had tested them, and they had survived back at the Science Dome. The crate was opened, and the metal was brought in. People gathered around it like it was a sacred object. Liam began to build the real version of his machine, the pulse engine. Era sat beside him, bruised but alive. "You think the Guardian let us go?" she asked. Liam nodded slowly. "I think it wanted to know what we were willing to risk. Now it knows." Outside, the skies darkened again. The superstorm was only a few days away. But now, for the first time, Velora had a weapon, not a gun. Not a bomb, a machine powered by hope, courage, and two people who refused to run. Silence can be louder than thunder. That's what Era felt as she stood alone by the ocean's edge. The storm had calmed for now, but the sea whispered something else. A warning, maybe, or a secret, behind her. Inside the Science Dome, Liam worked fast. The pulse engine was halfway built, and the rare metal from Nyre had proven perfect. Velora had a fighting chance, but time was running out. "We need to test it," Liam said. "A small burst first, if the storm system accepts it." "We'll scale up," Era nodded, but her mind wasn't calm. Something about the Guardian in the drowned city still haunted her. It hadn't attacked to kill, it had watched, judged, paused. Later that night, as Liam calibrated the energy coils, a strange tremor passed through the ground. It was not a quake. It was too slow, too deep, too intelligent. Era turned to Liam. "That Guardian, what if it wasn't alone?" Liam stopped moving. "What do you mean?" "There are stories," she whispered, "of something older. Something sleeping beneath the ocean trenches. We call it the Leviathan." Liam frowned. "My sensors didn't detect anything that massive." "That's the problem," Era replied. "If it's as old as the planet, it may not be part of your system, because it was there before systems existed." The next day, as they prepared the pulse engine for its first field test, the ocean levels began to rise without rain. Waves rolled in slow and high, like something beneath the water was breathing. Veloran elders grew nervous. They whispered old words, ancient warnings. "The sea remembers, the sea watches, the sea protects its balance." Liam, curious but undeterred, flew the engine to a testing platform built on the sea's edge. Era went with him, along with a few brave engineers. The platform floated over deep waters. Anchored by forgotten ruins, Liam activated the engine. A soft hum filled the air, peaceful, like a lullaby. The clouds above shifted slightly. A ripple ran through the skies. It was working. But then the ocean cracked. Not literally, but that's what it felt like. A sound deep and wide rose from the abyss. Not a roar, not a growl, but something older. A voice without words, full of anger and sorrow. From below, a shadow rose, massive, endless, impossible. The sea pulled away from it, as if afraid. The Leviathan had awakened, its eyes glowing with the memory of millions of years locked onto the platform. It was not a beast, it was a guardian of balance, a keeper of natural laws. And Liam's machine? It was a threat to that balance. The pulse engine sparked, confused by the distortion. In the air, Era shouted, "Shut it down. It's provoking the ocean." Liam hesitated. "It's not just a creature, it's testing us, like the Guardian in the city did." The Leviathan rose higher. Its body coiled like mountains made of flesh and light. It did not attack, it waited. Liam stepped onto the edge of the platform, raised his voice. "We're not here to take control," he said. "We're here to repair what was broken." The Leviathan blinked slowly, as if remembering something. Maybe it had seen humans before. Maybe it remembered Earth, their lost planet, their failures. Liam continued. "My kind destroyed our world by ignoring warnings. I won't do that again. We want to live, but not by stealing balance. By respecting it." The sea calmed slightly. The Leviathan circled the platform, slow and quiet. Then, it opened its massive mouth not to swallow them, but to release something. A glowing orb, ancient and pulsing with energy, floated upward. It hovered near the platform, gently humming. Era stepped forward, stunned. "It's a key," she whispered. "A data stone from the First Age." "Before even my ancestors," Liam reached out, took the orb into his hands. The pulse engine reacted immediately, syncing with the energy pattern. The Leviathan began to sink back into the deep. But before it vanished, its voice echoed in their minds. "Not in words, but in understanding. Use it wisely, or the ocean will rise again." Silence returned. The waves softened. The skies held their breath. Back at the dome, the data stone revealed ancient blueprints, not just weather control, but weather communication, a system that once allowed a civilization to speak with nature, not command it. Liam stared at the patterns, his eyes wide. "This changes everything," he said. Era smiled. "No more fighting storms. We're going to learn their language." But not everyone was happy. Hidden in the lower city, Vorn watched the event unfold from a hacked drone feed. He didn't believe in balance or old sea creatures. He believed power should be taken, not earned. And now, he had a new plan. The Leviathan had given them a gift, but to keep it, they would need to pass the hardest test yet. There is a moment between silence and sound, a fragile space where decisions are made. That moment had arrived for Velora. The Leviathan had gone, sinking back into the deep, but it left behind something more powerful than any storm knowledge. Inside the ancient data stone was a language forgotten by time. Not a language of words, but of energy, rhythm, and balance. Liam stood alone in the corner of the science dome, eyes fixed on the holographic patterns floating in the air. It was beautiful, terrifying, and overwhelming. A system so advanced that it made his Earth-born technology look like toys. "We have a way now," Era said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Not just to survive, but to finally speak to the planet." Liam turned, his voice quiet. "Then we have to move fast. The superstorm is 3 days away, and if it hits at full strength, nothing will be left to save." They named it the Final Pulse, a full-scale version of the device they'd tested, upgraded with ancient code and Leviathan harmonics. Not a weapon, not a shield, but a conversation starter between people and planet. In the center of the old city, a massive crater became their building ground. It once held a skylift station, now broken, rusted, forgotten. Liam chose it for one reason: symbolism. From a place that once tried to reach the sky, they would now speak to it, day and night. Teams worked like veins in a living machine. Engineers soldered energy panels. Farmers brought chemical stabilizers from their old equipment. Children even painted signal markings by hand, guided by the patterns in the stone. Hope had returned. But so had fear, deep underground, in a silent lab long abandoned. Vorn watched the construction through a hidden terminal. He had once believed in science. Now he believed only in control. To him, Liam was not a savior, he was a threat. If the Final Pulse worked, the people would follow Liam, not their own kind, and Vorn couldn't accept that. Back above, Liam stood on the growing structure, surrounded by sparks and humming metal. He looked tired, older somehow, like the weight of two worlds rested on his shoulders. Era joined him, wiping sweat from her forehead. "You okay?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Better than last time I tried saving a planet." "You talk like you've done this before." "I tried," Liam said. "Back on Earth, just before the final collapse. We had a weather AI, we called it Siren. It failed because we forced it to obey. We never asked the weather what it wanted. Now. I'm trying again. But this time, I'm listening. Era paused. You still think of Earth a lot, don't you? Liam nodded slowly. It was home, and I watched it drown because we waited too long to care. The two stood in silence, surrounded by the humming of machines and the distant roll of clouds. The storm was coming. They could feel it in their bones. That night, the sabotage began, in the heart of the structure. Where the harmonics core pulsed quietly, a time disruptor was planted. Vorn's device was simple, but deadly. It wouldn't explode. It would scramble the frequencies, make the final pulse sound like noise instead of song to the planet. It would feel like an attack, not a message. The next morning, Liam noticed it. He was checking the signal calibration when he felt the vibrations were wrong, too jagged, too aggressive. Era, he called. Someone's corrupted the system. Her face paled. Who would? I don't know, he said. But if we fire it like this, the planet might answer with a bigger storm. They shut down the system, tore into the core, and worked nonstop to isolate the corrupted code. It took 14 hours, 2 blown circuits, and 1 power outage. Finally, Liam found it, a hidden transmitter buried in the signal converter. Old tech, Valoran design. This wasn't human sabotage. This was betrayal from within Marin, the council. Leader was called in. He stared at the device, shocked. We have a traitor, he said. And the storm is nearly here. Liam didn't waste time. We rebuild the converter from scratch, he said. Manually, no code sharing, no autosync. We do it blind and raw. No one questioned him now. They had seen the Leviathan. They had seen what Liam could build from broken things. As the sun dipped behind gray clouds, and the first tendrils of wind kissed the city walls, the final pulse stood ready again, rewired, purified, alive. Liam stood at its core, hands shaking. Slightly. This is it, he said. This time, we don't fight the storm. We ask it to make space for us. We ask to exist, not rule. Arera placed her hand on the control lever. Let's talk to the sky, she whispered. And they pulled it down together. A deep hum spread across the land. The clouds above paused, then parted slightly. The pulse was soft, musical. A tone that rose and fell like a heartbeat. In the distance, lightning paused. The wind turned, confused. And the storm slowed. For a moment, the sky was quiet. The storm didn't vanish, but it listened. Valora had spoken. The planet had heard. But the peace was thin, like glass under pressure. And far below, in the shadow of the dome, Vorn watched. He hadn't. Then stopped, only delayed, and he had one more move to play. Because sometimes, the storm isn't the danger. Sometimes, the danger wears your face. Asterisk. The sky was not quiet, it was thinking. Above the trembling towers of Valora, clouds spun like massive gears, not wild, not chaotic, but organized, as if waiting for something. The final pulse had been fired. Not to destroy, not to control, but to speak. And now, the storm was answering. Liam stood at the center of the harmonics deck, his hands trembling slightly, all around him. Lights flickered and spun in soft patterns, like language made of color. Era stood beside him, frozen in awe. It's working, she whispered. It's listening, Liam replied. But it doesn't understand yet. The storm above was no longer attacking, it was hovering. Winds moved in perfect circles, lightning crackled but never struck. The entire system was behaving like a massive nervous system, alive, reactive, curious. Inside the dome, the frequency readers began picking up vibrations, not random noise but patterns, repeating pulses, low and long, like breath. It wasn't just weather, it was memory. The storm is talking, Era said slowly. But how do we talk back? Liam stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the waveform holograms. We don't speak to it, he said. We remind it. Remind it of what? Of who we are, Liam replied. And what we forgot. The Leviathan's data stone held more than just technical blueprints. It held echoes of ancient sound. Songs from the first Valorans harmonic chants they once used to balance rain and sun. They weren't commands, they were acknowledgments, a way of showing the planet it was seen, understood, respected. Liam loaded one of those chants into the pulse, a soft melody, barely above a whisper, played into the clouds. It didn't ask, didn't demand, it simply said, "We are here, and we remember." The storm shivered. Not in anger, but like something waking from a long sleep. Then, the wind fell completely silent, and a sound came, not thunder, not rain, but a voice. It wasn't a voice in the air, it was inside them, inside every Valoran's chest, inside. Every breath, you changed. The voice felt ancient, wide, slow. It didn't sound like a god or a monster, it sounded like the planet itself. Era's legs nearly gave out. Did it just speak to us? Liam's face was pale. It did. The storm had become self-aware, not because it evolved, but because the people finally stopped shouting and started listening. It spoke again. Too much, taken. Too fast. No time to breathe. Liam understood. It's not angry, he said softly. It's wounded. The pulse engine picked up more fragments. Flood. Was not punishment, was protection, a correction. Balance must be kept. The planet hadn't tried to kill its people. It had tried to stop itself from dying, long ago when Valorans built too much, harvested too quickly, and ignored nature's warnings. The system responded not with hate, but with desperation. Storms were not an enemy. They were the last defense. Era stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "We're sorry," she said aloud, not knowing if it would understand. "We forgot how to live with you, not on top of you." The lights on the pulse changed, glowing warmer. The voice came again. "Memory returns, but damage remains." That's when Liam realized something terrifying. "This isn't over," he said. "It's offering us a chance, but we haven't earned it yet." He turned to Era. "We need to repair the balance, not just speak to it." "But how?" she asked. "We can't undo centuries of damage overnight." Liam walked toward the core interface, his eyes locked on the energy logs. "We give it what we always took. Time, space, trust." He began adjusting the signal, lowering the pulse frequency into resting mode. They wouldn't push the storm anymore, they would let it breathe. But just as the storm began to open, just as hope sparked again, a sudden surge hit the dome. Systems blinked, lights died, alarms wailed. The pulse engine's calibration spun out of control. The soft hum turned into a harsh shriek. Era shouted, "What's happening?" Liam's face darkened. "This isn't unnatural error. Someone's forcing the signal back to max." And then, on the screen, Vorn's face appeared. He was inside an old control chamber, lines of corrupted code running behind him. "I warned you," Vorn said. "This planet doesn't need peace. It needs leadership." He had hijacked the pulse remotely, turned the language of harmony into a weapon. The storm above trembled in confusion, its trust betrayed once more. "No," Era cried. "You'll undo everything. I'm doing what should have been done years ago." Vorn snapped. "Control the storm, rule the planet." But Liam didn't freeze, he moved fast, opened a manual override panel and began slicing through the corrupted lines. The storm began to spin again, faster now, panicked, angry, lost. It had opened its heart, and now it was being stabbed. "We need to restore the original signal," Liam said. "But the system's locked," Era shouted. "Then we do it from the source," he replied. The pulse tower itself outside. Wind howled around them as Liam and Era sprinted into the storm. Rain lashed at their faces. Electricity sparked under their boots. They reached the tower, climbed through wind that screamed like a wounded animal. At the top, Liam jammed the reset crystal from the Leviathan directly into the core. A golden wave spread out, the corrupted code burned away, and the voice returned. "This is the truth. You still choose balance." The storm paused once more, then it began to calm, not vanish but settle. The clouds opened slightly, and light touched Velora for the first time in years. A small light, but enough to promise something bigger. The sky was not gray anymore. It wasn't clear either, but for the first time in living memory, it was changing. Between scattered clouds, patches of light began to bloom, soft, golden light, the kind that whispers before a sunrise. It didn't scream, it didn't roar. It simply arrived like an apology from the heavens. Velora stood still, holding its breath. The storm hadn't disappeared, but it had stepped back. After centuries of anger and silence, the planet had finally spoken. And someone just one had chosen to listen. Liam stood at the tower's peak, clothes torn, hands shaking. His eyes scanned the clouds like they were ancient text. Era sat beside him, her face tilted toward the fragile light. Rain still dripped from the tower, but it was soft now, gentle, forgiving. Below them, the people of Velora gathered at the base of the tower. No more running, no more hiding. They stood in the open, unafraid of the sky for the first time in their lives. The pulse engine hummed quietly, not broadcasting power, not forcing change. Just breathing with the storm. Liam looked over the landscape, flooded cities, cracked roads, broken spires, and yet, in the middle of all that ruin, there was a sound he hadn't heard since Earth. Children laughing, splashing in puddles, not running from them. Era smiled. "Do you hear that?" Liam nodded. "That's what a second chance sounds like." Inside the science dome, the Leviathan stone pulsed softly. The final message had been unlocked. A set of coordinates deep underground beneath the oldest forest, still untouched by machines. Era's eyes widened. "What is it?" Liam studied the symbols carefully. "I think it's a seed vault," he said. "Not just for plants, but for the old balance, waiting to grow again." And with that, Velora found its next mission, not just survival, but restoration. But not everyone had survived the night. Vorn had vanished. His sabotage had failed, but he had escaped. Some said he'd fled to the outer colonies. Others believed he was still somewhere in the system, waiting to strike again. But for now, no one cared. The storm was calm. The planet had accepted the peace. 2 weeks later, Liam stood at the edge of a rebuilt tower. A ship waited behind him, his own, not for escape, but for goodbye. "You're really leaving?" Era asked. He nodded slowly. "I've done what I came to do." "You could stay," she said. He looked at her, eyes full of warmth and sorrow. "I could," he whispered. "But there are other storms out there, other planets calling for help, and someone has to answer." Aura stepped forward and handed him a small orb Valoran crystal, etched with the harmonics of their new sky. "For when you forget what hope sounds like," she said. Liam held it like a treasure. Before stepping into the ship, he looked back at the sky. A soft wind brushed across the towers, not screaming, not tearing, just dancing. It was no longer a storm. It was a song. The ship rose slowly, quiet and steady. Valorans watched from every rooftop, every balcony, not as strangers watching an alien fly away, but as people waving at a friend. A hero who didn't come with weapons, but with questions. A man who didn't want to rule, only repair. As Liam disappeared into the clouds, a single beam of sunlight broke through and painted the dome in gold. Children pointed, smiling. Elders wept silently. The sky was alive again. Back at the pulse tower, I rocked to the edge and looked up. Not in fear, but in trust. The clouds above moved gently, almost playfully, like they were listening still. Velora had learned something no machine could teach. That survival is not strength, it's balance. The planet would never be the same again. And neither would its people. And far beyond, in a quiet ship gliding through the stars, Liam sat alone. Holding the glowing orb close to his chest, he didn't know where his next landing would be, but he knew what he would say when he arrived. "Hi," he would begin. "I'm human. I come from a broken world. But I've learned how to listen, because sometimes the greatest power in the universe is knowing when not to speak, but to understand." And somewhere, beyond the next galaxy, another storm waited, and another story was about to begin.